So we've been talking about Dogen's text on the Bodhisattva's 4 methods. And we talked about giving, or dana. We talked about loving speech. And tonight we arrive at the 3rd, which is often translated as beneficial action. Now this is actually paired with the next, which is identity action. And as awkward a construction as identity action is, because what is identity action? I want to make a case that beneficial action is not a great translation, that in fact it's benefit action, not beneficial action. Beneficial action suggests that the actions we perform have to be beneficial. Benefit action, I think, points to the reality of this, which is that this is about performing actions for the benefit of others. It's not about the outcome, it's not about the success. We don't get to control that, but we get to choose that orientation. So I may actually fall into saying beneficial action again because I'm reading this translation. But benefit action, I think, it's one step closer anyway to what's in the original. Dogen writes, beneficial action, benefit action, means creating skillful means to benefit living beings, whether they are noble or humble. For example, we care for the near and distant future of others and use skillful means to benefit them. Now, skillful means, I think we just need to be cautious around skillful means. Skillful means, I think, sounds sometimes, to me anyway, like you have a toolbox, like you have a set of tools that you're using. That's not it. He actually uses, he says, creating skillful means. This is a creative act, moment to moment. We're looking at the circumstances in front of us. And then we're looking at who we've decided to be. And who we've decided to be in the context of this text, in the context of this teaching, in the context of this tradition, is someone who walks the bodhisattva path. And the bodhisattva path is the path of trying to serve all, trying to help all, without discrimination and without cease. Again, it isn't about knowing how. It isn't about succeeding. It's about understanding moment to moment that this is your job. So skillful means, it's not quite as fancy as it sounds. It's just the choices we're making, the conscious choices we're making in relationship to what is in front of us. With that idea that we can, if not bring benefit, we can try. And then he gives these 2 examples, and I'm going to say before I read them, that Dogen kind of misses the mark here. He gets close, and then he blows it, and I'll explain how. Dogen writes, we should take pity on a cornered tortoise and care for a sick sparrow. When we see this tortoise or sparrow, we try to help it without expecting any reward. We are motivated solely by beneficial action itself. I love this, especially the tortoise, because I can imagine, you're walking and you see, here he says cornered tortoise, but you can imagine maybe one that's been flipped over. Right? It's so simple. You understand in the moment that you see that you are in a position to serve. And so you do it. You just flip it back over. It takes a second of your time, maybe 2. And we do it because that's what we're supposed to do. We know that that's what we're supposed to do. We know how wrong it would be to just keep walking. How almost sadistic it would be to miss that opportunity to turn the tortoise right again. And no one will ever write a poem about you for having done it. No one will see it. The tortoise will not thank you. You get nothing from this except the knowledge that you didn't veer from the path. Now that's the good part. But for background, I want to say, both of these examples are references to older Chinese stories that undermine what he's saying. And it bothers me a little bit. Because in both cases, when the person in the story rescued the cornered tortoise and when the person rescued the sparrow, they were rewarded in a manner very similar to kissing a frog and finding out that it's a prince and then getting to live a lavish life. When the person who saved the tortoise and the person who saved the sparrow did that, they were later visited by supernatural means with wealth and success. So yes, they didn't do it with thought of that reward. But in telling the story in that way, you're suggesting almost a theism, that there's a kind of almost heavenly reward awaiting you. If we hold to that idea, we cannot help but fall into a transactional mind. Right? Then it's like buying a lottery ticket. I understand when I buy a lottery ticket, there's very little chance that I'm going to win, but I might win. Right? And if I believe that by flipping over the tortoise, I might be rewarded, that's a kind of virus in the mind. Maybe I'm really doing this for myself. Maybe I'm going to benefit. Maybe this is the magic tortoise. Maybe someone will notice. Whatever that is, we need to be careful. Dogen writes, ignorant people may think that if we benefit others too much, our own benefit will be excluded. This is important. He writes, this is not the case. Benefit action is the whole of Dharma. And then he says, again falling into this, it benefits both self and others widely. Sure. But we could just say it benefits. Ignorant people may think that if we benefit others too much, our own benefit will be excluded. He says this is not the case. He is not, in my opinion, suggesting that we should be pushovers. He is not, in my opinion, suggesting that we don't have actual limitations as to our resources. We don't have infinite money. We don't have infinite time. We don't have infinite energy. We can't give things we don't have. And yet, even when it feels like our hands are empty, our basic orientation, our basic trajectory can be that of giving. That of trying to help. Not withholding, not imagining that there's something we have to keep. Because nothing that he's talking about here is something we get to put in the bank anyway. We can have honest boundaries based on our honest situation. In an ancient era, and then he tells this story which some of you have heard. In an ancient era, a man who tied up his hair 3 times while he took a bath, and who stopped eating 3 times in the space of 1 meal, solely intended to benefit others. I went looking for the detailed explanation of this story, but basically it takes place in a time when the custom was that if someone called on you as a guest, you had to take a bath as a way of greeting them. And you had to so 3 times in the course of one meal, someone visited and he stopped what he was doing. He stopped his meal, he went and took a bath, he came out, and he embraced them as host, fully occupying that role. And then when the whole thing was done, he went back, he sat down again, someone else showed up, he went through the whole thing again. It's not that someone benefits from him taking a bath. It's not that they couldn't sit and talk with him while he's eating a meal, but that his understanding in that culture and that time was that this is what it looks like to give. This is what it looks like to do something fully. So he did it that way. And Dogen uses that as an example. Someone who is undeterred. Therefore, he writes, we should equally benefit friends and foes alike. We should benefit self and others alike. There's no relationship in which we don't take this stance, this orientation. Because beneficial actions never regress, if we attain such a mind, we can perform benefit action even for grass, trees, wind, and water. If everything we do is oriented toward benefit, we don't need to choose its object. We should solely strive to help ignorant beings. That includes us. It's fairly straightforward. It's very hard to do. And I want to go back to the tortoise. Because I think it's important for us to look at what it looks like to care for something and why we do it. I know some people here are dog people. You have dogs and you love dogs. You care for your dogs. You feed your dogs, you treat your dogs like kings. So the question arises, why? Do you do it because you're trying to accumulate as many reward points as possible in heaven? Do you do it because you're trying to impress your neighbors? You hope that they see what a good person you are. Are you doing it because you want to be attractive to someone? Are you doing it because you're afraid that if you don't do it, that your dog will turn on you? No. You take care of your dog because you love your dog. And why do you love your dog? For no reason. No rational reason. You've chosen this. It's the same with our children. It's the same with our spouses. My family, a month ago, we got a little hamster named Greta. She's really cute. Greta doesn't love us. She's not a cuddly hamster. She doesn't really want to be touched. She doesn't want us to play with her in the way that maybe the kids would have hoped when she came into our home. She tolerates us. Sometimes even to the point of letting us pet her a little bit while she's eating kale or something. But we love her. We love her. We delight in her existence and we delight in taking care of her. Why? It makes no sense. Except we've chosen it. And the alternative is so bleak. And so every time she emerges from her little burrow, we cheer. Every time she stuffs something ridiculous into her cheeks, we couldn't be happier in that moment. We don't need anything from her. I think that applies to a lot of things, if we're honest. And we can practice in those ways. We can make those choices. We can do the experiment. Whatever it is that lights up in our heart when we see our pet will light up when we see the tortoise. It will light up when we see our friend. It will light up when we see a stranger in time. And because we know how to respond to one, we know how to respond to the other. Again, not in the specifics, but this feeling of moving toward instead of moving away. This feeling of including and embracing instead of leaving out. There's no limit to what we can hold. And it makes no difference what wants to be held or not. This is our capacity. That's where I'll stop. Let's bow to each other again.